Hello all, welcome to the new Simply Put series by Kalam Eyes Academy. This is Priyanka Mahapatra, faculty at Kalam Eyes. So today we'll be having a discussion on the newspaper dated 14th December 2023. So the text and the context section of the Hindu newspaper was not having any articles which is important from our exam point of view. Again, a book review is given, so that we'll be discussing on Saturday, right? And coming to the explain section of the Indian Express newspaper, two articles were very important. That is about the Lok Sabha breach that happened and about the COP28. So we'll be discussing two articles today which are displayed on your screen. So let's get started with the first article, that is the COP28. What were the most important decisions and where they fell short? So this is very important from your GS3 perspective and essay perspective, right? So why this is in news? Because recently we all know that how COP28 got concluded in Dubai and it made some very important resolutions on climate change. It made key resolutions on fossil fuels, on methane emissions, on funds to fight global warming, right? And despite making so many resolutions, many concerns still remain. So we'll look into the concerns and what were promised, right, in this discussion. So firstly, we'll look into the outcomes of COP28. So firstly, it is the first time that we acknowledged the need to move away from fossil fuels. Very, very important. Then it was the first promise we made to reduce the methane emissions as well. So why did we target methane gas? Because it is one of the widespread gas after CO2 responsible for global warming, right? It is 80 times more potent in global warming, right? Then we also got into operation the loss and the damage fund. Then we also made a framework for the global goal on adaptation. So something we have made, something we have thought of on the adaptation area, which was much neglected till now, right? So apart from the key resolutions adopted, we also had an expectation to carry out the global stocktake. Actually, this global stocktake, GST, was mandated by the Paris Agreement to be conducted in the year 2023. It was expected to be a periodic exercise. The first one was to be done in 2023 and after every 5 years thereafter, right? So global stocktake, what is it? It is a kind of comprehensive assessment of where the world is standing now in the fight against the climate change, so that we know that where we need to do more to meet the climate objectives, right? So it was not done. And again, 2023 is a very vital year when the climate change is concerned, because it has been already confirmed that year 2023 is the hottest year ever, because more than 80 days this year happened to be at least 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer than the pre-industrial levels. So in spite of such an alarming situation, every assessment is showing that the world is not doing enough. So how did we fall short in every arena? Let's see one by one. So in case of fossil fuels, it was promised, it was proposed that the countries will now contribute towards transitioning away from the fossil fuels so as to achieve the net zero target by 2050. This is very, very important from your prelims point of view, that we have a target to achieve net zero by 2050. So the country should start transitioning away from the fossil fuels. It is not talking about the phase out, it is talking about the phase down of the fossil fuels. So for that reason, many small island countries, they were extremely disappointed that why the term fossil phase out is not being used, right? But some developing countries, they are against the fossil fuel phase out because they need a decade or so to be as developed as the other developed nations are. They are in the development mode, so they cannot phase out completely the fossil fuel usage, right? Again, there were no time schedules, no targets mentioned that how this phasing down of fossil fuels is to be achieved country by country. Again, the production and consumption of fossil fuels are unlikely to be curbed significantly in the near term, because the countries like India, China, Russia, they aren't on the same page with respect to phasing down of fossil fuels. Again, coming to the tripling of renewable energy, it has been proposed that we triple our global installed capacity of renewable energy and also double the annual improvements in energy efficiency. So this is a very, very important step for all the countries. Why? Because this is the only step, this is the only doable step for all the countries which can contribute to the additional emission reduction or the mitigation, since it has the potential to prevent the emissions of about 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide between now and 2030. But again, this tripling of renewable energy target is not incumbent on every country to individually triple their current installed capacity. It has been made a global target. It is not mandatory for every country to come and plan for tripling their installed capacity of renewable energy. Again, it is not clear that how this tripling would be ensured. There is no enforcement mechanism, right? So that is how we fell short on this target as well. Then we come to the phase down of coal. So coal among all the fossil fuels is again targeted like we did in the Glasgow conference in 2021. So there we singled out this fossil fuel. Now also we have singled out this fossil fuel, coal, among all the fossil fuels for their phase down. So what is the problem in that? Because other fossil fuels like the natural gas and oil, they together constitute around 80% of the emissions. So it is not only the coal which is responsible for all the emissions. Apart from the coal, oil and natural gas has to be phased down. So this concern was not taken care of in this COP28. Again, it was a proposal made that no new coal-fired power plants could be opened without any inbuilt carbon capture and storage facility, which was very much strongly resisted by India, China, South Africa, and other developing countries. Right? And it is also not clear that how this phase down is to be measured or from what baseline it is to be counted. Right? So this is how we fell short on this proposal as well. Then we come to the methane emission cuts. So why methane as a gas is been targeted? Why in fact it is the first time that we made some promise with regard to cutting down the methane emissions in the fight against climate change? Because methane is the most widespread greenhouse gas apart from CO2, which is accounting for 25% of all the emissions. It is also 80 times more potent than CO2 in causing global warming. So these two factors are very, very important from your prelims point of view. That is why countries are now very serious about accelerating and substantially reducing the non-carbon dioxide gas emissions globally. That is the methane. So in this scenario, what is happening that India is very much opposed to such mandate of cutting down the methane emissions. Why? Because India is a developing country. It needs to take care of its poor and vulnerable section. It needs to take care of the food security of its vulnerable people. So what is happening that methane emissions, as you know, it is basically sourced from the agricultural fields and the livestock. So if we take seriously, if we make any effort to cut down the methane emissions, then we are tweaking the cropping pattern or the agricultural pattern of our country. That is indirectly or directly impacting the food security of our country. That is why India is opposed to such move. Another concern is that the agreement is not mentioning any target for methane cuts for the year 2030. Again, for your information, you need to know that we had already made a voluntary commitment regarding the methane emission cut, right, in the Glasgow in 2021 to reduce the methane emissions by 30% by 2030. Here some 100 countries, they made the voluntary agreement to cut down emissions of methane gas. So this can also come in your exam, that it is not the first time. We had some voluntary commitment earlier also from Glasgow conference in 2021, right? Then we come to the loss and damage fund. Yes, we operationalized this fund this time for the poor and vulnerable countries to give them the financial help which they are trying to recover from the climate induced disasters, right? It is kind of financial help to help them cope up with the climate induced disasters. So around 800 million US dollars have been committed, including the host country, UAE, right? Then we come to the global goal on adaptation. So for the very first time, adaptation, which has been historically not receiving enough attention, this time we have at least talked of this thing. At least we are thinking of bringing some framework on adaptation, right? So why adaptation hasn't received enough attention so far, or any resources or any financial provision so far compared to mitigation activities? Because it is a localized effort. It is a localized endeavor. Its benefits are mostly seen locally. For example, climate smart agriculture. So coming to what is adaptation, it is basically adjusting to the existing situation. It is responding or adjusting to the existing impact of climate change, right? So the benefits which we see are localized because the efforts which we make, they are in the local level. For example, climate smart agriculture, or any effort to reduce the climate induced water scarcity. So that is why the developed countries are less bothered about bringing the localized effect. Whereas mitigation, it is kind of global endeavor. Its effects are seen widespread, right? It is kind of the actions taken to reduce or to prevent the emission of the greenhouse gases. So it is a global responsibility. That is why we have been taking steps towards mitigation, not adaptation so far. So this time also the agreement, the global goal on adaptation, has no financial provisions to it, right? So this is how we talked of the concerns of the COP28 meeting, where they have short, where they have fallen short, right? So this you need to know whenever any question comes regarding the climate change efforts which we are making internationally or nationally, right? So this is the end of this topic's discussion. Then we come to the second article of the day, that is, what are the rules for parliament visitors and what guarantees an MP has to give with respect to the visitor. So why this is in news? Because the two intruders, we know that they have barged into the parliament, and that is on the 22nd anniversary of 2001 parliamentary attack. And that happened on the basis of the visitor pass issued to them on the request of BJP MP Pratap Simha. So here the accused, Manoranjan D, he got the passes on the pretext of visiting or watching the new parliament. And he and his friend were pursuing Simha and his office for the past 3 months for the passes, right? So now the entry of the visitors in the house has been suspended. Back in 1994 also we witnessed such incidents. We witnessed two other incidents of jumping into the Lok Sabha. So in this scenario, the question arises that what is the process of issuing such visitor passes for the parliament? Is the MP supposed to know the visitor personally or bear any sort of responsibility for his conduct? So we'll be discussing all the details about it. This article is very, very important from the prelims point of view. So all the security protocols which we are going to discuss, the rules of the house we are going to discuss, they can be asked in the options of prelims exam. So here you need to know, you need to have these points in your mind so that you can correctly identify there which is right, which is wrong, right? So coming to the rules of the house, it mandates the security staff in the visitors gallery. There is a security staff stationed in the visitors gallery in the parliament to maintain a strict vigil. Okay, they will ensure that the visitors, they do not indulge in any kind of misbehavior, right? And these entry, exit and removal of visitors referred to as strangers by the MPs, right? They are being controlled by Rule 386 of the Rules of Procedure and Conduct of Business in the Lok Sabha. Again, speaker being the leader of the house, he or she can make orders to regulate the access of strangers to the areas of the house, not exclusively reserved for the members during its sessions. So he or she can make orders to regulate the access of strangers in the house. Then 387 rule, it grants the speaker the authority to remove the strangers also from any section of the house if he or she believe it to be necessary at that point of time. Then the process of entry for strangers. There is a certain process. The parliamentary member can request the visitor cards only for the people they know personally. Very, very important. Again, the visitors are mandated to carry a photo identification. Their names must be provided in full. The full name of the visitor's father or husband has to be there in the visitor card. Then the request for the admission cards to the public gallery must be submitted to the centralized pass issue cell by 4 p.m. on the working day before the desired date. So before the desired date, the request has to be submitted in the issue cell by 4 p.m. In the Rajya Sabha case, it is by 3 p.m. Right? And again, there is a provision that you can also request the visitor card on the same day in urgent situation. So in the urgent situation, what happens that the member can get up to 4 same day visitor cards for a specific day. There is a restriction of only issuing 4 same day visitor card for the specific day. And the parliamentary member can collect, he must be collecting the card in person. And it specifies the exact hour also, in which hour the visitor is making the visit in the parliament. And the card is ready for use at least 2 hours after the application. Right? And in the Lok Sabha, we have two types of galleries, like public gallery and the speakers gallery. Right? A member can bring in 4 people daily to the public gallery and 2 people to the speakers gallery. Very, very important. This can be asked in your prelims exam. However, the names of the visitors for the speakers gallery must be approved by the speaker himself or herself. Very, very important. Anyone who is visiting to the speakers gallery must be approved by the speaker himself or herself. Similar rules are in force with respect to Rajya Sabha also. Right? And it is advised that the parliamentary members, they bear in mind that they are responsible for any kind of undesirable incident happening in the galleries. So the MP is himself responsible, because there is a clause that they should be knowing that person in the personal level. So any kind of untoward incident that is happening, so the MP is responsible for that. So before we end this discussion, I want to intimate that the short notes of this particular discussion, in fact, all the discussions of New Simply Put series, the short notes of it, they are being provided in our Telegram channel, that is Kalam IAS Academy. You can join our channel, and the link for joining that channel has been provided in the description box. Right? So stay tuned for the next discussion that is happening tomorrow on 15th December 2023. Until then, take care. Goodbye. Happy learning.